This is the Dr Hickey Surgery. It's a general practice specifically for homeless people, and we've been here in South Westminster since 1987, 34 years now, in order specifically to deal with the needs of the very large numbers of people who become homeless and sleep rough in South Westminster. And she recognised the need for this because of the very large numbers of people who were homeless at that time. Predominantly at that time, homeless families. And she set up the practice because she was perceiving that their needs were not being adequately met by mainstream practices who weren't able to provide the level of access and responsiveness that these people needed. And the predominant causes of that homelessness have changed. As I think we've often spoken about, homelessness is primarily a disease of relationships. It's what happens when nobody in the world will give you a bed for the night. And at the moment, the medical conditions which most commonly cause people to become and to remain homeless are those of substance misuse, alcohol problem drinking, chronic severe mental illness, major neurotic illnesses such as post-traumatic stress disorder, obsessive compulsive disease, and personality disorder, and to some extent a broad range of things that we normally think of as the diseases of migration, because one of the things that happens when you migrate between countries is that you detach yourself from many of the supportive networks and relationships. The coronavirus crisis has been quite an extraordinary event in the life of our patients, and I mean in some respects it's an ill wind that blows nobody any good, and in some respects for at least some of our patients this has been a remarkably positive period of time. I mean, initially they were predominantly affected not so much by the disease of the coronavirus but by the policy response, by the lockdowns. And a lot of them came onto script, became very stable, did very well. And also at the same time there was, I think as was well known, the hotel initiative, whereby a lot of rough sleepers were given hotel accommodation. And initially we wondered how successful this was going to be. And interestingly, within a week or two, we began to hear from the staff of the hotels who weren't initially at all sure that this was a project they wanted to be involved with. But they pretty rapidly discovered that if they treated our people the way they treated their ordinary customers, then they turned out to be an awful lot nicer than their ordinary customers. And they became really enthusiastic, and I think that was a big part of why it was such a success. Yes, one of the great signs of hope that we've seen has been the vaccination program, which I think has worked much better than anybody could have predicted or even hoped, including in our population. I think, as is well known, generally there's been very good uptake in vaccinations generally. And I have to say, it's been one of the most enjoyable things I've ever had in my professional life was participating in this, because you have so many people who've been in penal isolation for 9 months, and suddenly it's as if you turn up with a key, and suddenly they see hope and the prospect of a real move forward. And it's been particularly nice to be able to offer that to our population. I'm pleased to say that the Health Authority and the JCVI, the Joint Committee on Vaccines and Immunisation, have recognised that homelessness is an independent risk factor and allowed us to prioritise our patients. So we've actually been able to offer it to the great majority of our patients, and many of them have been very, very willing to take the vaccine, and thereby to protect both themselves, the people around them, and also because our people are very mobile. It's been very important from the point of view of the general health of the population that they are immunised and are therefore not likely to spread the disease to others. And so that's probably been the nicest thing I've been able to do all year for our people, is to provide that opportunity. Yeah, I think looking forward, one of the things that I would have a lot of concern about is the way in which the socioeconomic consequences of the coronavirus crisis will affect people in coming times. And I think this is particularly going to affect young people in this country, particularly those recent entrants to the job market. It's not clear that the starter jobs are going to be there for them. And I would have real concern about what's going to happen to them if they become destitute, if they become homeless and friendless and lose the relationships that will sustain them. So one of the things that I would be concerned about seeing is rising numbers of young people sleeping outside and being very vulnerable, very inexperienced in the ways of the street, being at great risk of being sucked into very harmful addictions and criminal behaviour. And I do think that's going to be a very prominent feature of our work in the future, and indeed the work of the Cardinal Hume Centre more widely, because of the centre's long-standing mission to young homeless people.